Newest Toronto Raptor Jakob had his first media availability as a member of the Raptors since the trade went down, and he had a lot of interesting comments regarding the whole situation, including his potential role with the Raptors and his long-term fit with the team, as he is an unrestricted free agent this summer. And he had an interesting comment about his number change that a few people are reading into. So we'll discuss that, as well as Pascal Siakam being named an all-star as an injury replacement, and a couple offers that were revealed following this year's trade deadline, including the Nets going hard after Pascal Siakam to appease Kevin Durant, and some OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet deals that I'm happy that didn't go through. So we'll discuss all of that more in this video. So without further ado, let's jump to the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is Jakob seeing himself as a long-term fit with the Toronto Raptors. So Poeltl had a lot of interesting comments in his introductory presser as just being traded to the team. People want to hear what he had to say. And Poeltl, for people that don't know, was acquired by the Toronto Raptors ahead of this year's trade deadline. He's a 7-foot center that was with the team. He was drafted by the Raptors and traded away in the Kawhi Leonard deal that won the Raptors an NBA championship. But he's back right now, ready to fill that hole the Toronto Raptors have desperately needed filled at the center position. And he's an elite defender. He can finish around the rim. Really nice fit for the Toronto Raptors. And he had a lot of interesting comments yesterday. Basically, coming out and saying the first thing, the big question on everyone's mind, will he play tonight? And he says he's unsure if he's able to play tonight against Utah. If it were up to him, he'd be out there playing with his old/new team, but it'll depend on whether he gets cleared, post-trade, physical, all that sort of stuff. But the Raptors are still waiting on league approval, but the expectation is that Poeltl will be able to play tonight. So that's one exciting news. Obviously, it's not official, but it's likely Jakob will see his debut against the Utah Jazz in tonight's game, going up against a Walker Kessler. That's a big to have your center to match up, because Kessler absolutely dominated us the last time he played the Utah Jazz. So Poeltl will be able to see his defensive prowess out there in tonight's game. I guess we did see him in the last Raptors game, just playing for the other team. But he went on to talk about his pending unrestricted free agency, because that was the big question about acquiring Jakob, especially where we're giving up a first-round pick that has very minimal protections on it. Will we be able to keep him around long-term? And he had this to say: as a pending unrestricted free agent, he says the Raptors wouldn't have traded for him if they didn't see him as a long-term fit. It's definitely something I can see for the long-term as well, according to Jakob. So obviously it's tough for a guy that hasn't even stepped on the court just yet to really make comments about his long-term future with an organization, but it seemed that Jakob was really happy about coming back to Toronto. All of his comments indicated, he's directly said he's happy to be back, and that he's excited to come with this core group. The San Antonio Spurs were a tanking team, had a lot of young players, not a lot of floor spacing, so to come into Toronto, even though there's not a tremendous amount more of floor spacing with the Raptors right now, but he's excited to come back and be competing for the playoffs and make a run now in the Eastern Conference. So he's encouraged about being back with the team, and he did say he sees it as a long-term fit, and the organization has likely told him that they want to keep him despite his unrestricted free agency, and a lot of other Raptors on the team being unrestricted free agents as well, including Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. But I'm glad that he didn't just dodge the question saying, hey, we'll deal with it when the summer comes. Guys that were formerly traded from the team might still have sour grapes and stuff, and PJ Tucker left us the season. We ended up acquiring him at the trade deadline, so there's all that sort of stuff, and we'll read into that with basically his next quote, so we'll just jump right into that. And Poeltl says that he's going to try and get comfortable in the system before he really starts asserting himself out there, and until then, it's obviously about defense. They had more comments about his role, but to segue from the previous comments, that Poeltl says that his number change is about a new chapter, but not revealing the reason between 19 beyond saying it's personal. So this is one thing I've seen a lot of Raptors fans running with, and even me myself, when I saw the initial graphic that popped up of Jakob wearing 19 rather than the 42 he was wearing with the Toronto Raptors his first go-around. And maybe it's something petty because the Toronto Raptors trade him for the 2018-2019 season. I'm not going to read into it further, but that would be pretty jokes. I doubt it's that, but a few people have been reading into it. I won't speak on it longer in there. But the interesting stuff is the role. And obviously he's being brought in as a defensive center. Now, Poeltl is a guy that's what he does best. Protecting the rim, playing that positional defense. He's not going to block 3 shots a night, but he'll change 5-10 shots, people driving into the lane. Poeltl just being that big body to stop on the help side defense. He can stay in front of guys like Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid called Jakob Poeltl one of the best defensive centers in the NBA. So we have a guy that can match up with the bigs in the Eastern Conference now, and he's not a complete scrub on the offensive end. He can finish around the rim. He can dunk the basketball. He's got some hops, Jakob Poeltl does. He's had a couple posters in his day, so, he's a guy that, sure, he's not going to be a Nick Claxton jumping out the gym or anything like that, but he can finish through dunks, finish with post hooks, finishes around the rim, but not much of a shooter, but not a guy that's a complete negative out there on offense. So, really encouraged about what he's able to do. And Masai Ujiri talked, as well as Poeltl alluded to in his comments, about him being more of a playmaker. Now, Big Yak has been averaging 3 assists per game this season, which is pretty solid for the center position, but the Toronto Raptors played best when they had their center, Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka. Serge got way better at when he was pushed to the center position rather than the 4, but being able to create in the high post, whether for themselves or for others. And obviously, Yak's not going to be able to knock down threes like Marc Gasol, at least in the championship run, but Gasol's three-point shot, obviously it's better than Jakob Poeltl's in his second season with the Raptors, but it fell off a cliff that second year there, but he was able to facilitate and create so much in that high post, it didn't even matter. So I'm hoping Jakob Poeltl can hopefully develop that same sort of impact as a passing big man on this team. So that's definitely going to be something to look out, and I'm really excited to see him play. I'm really amped up to watch this Toronto Raptors team play again. Hopefully we can get some W's going forward. But the next thing we're taking a look at is Pascal Siakam being named an All-Star. Now, Spicy P, right? A lot was made about him being snubbed from the All-Star game. A couple guys, I thought he should have made it over. The Eastern Conference is pretty stacked this year, but Woj came out with a little bomb today, right before we ended up starting the recording of this video. But saying that Minnesota's Anthony Edwards, Toronto's Pascal Siakam, Sacramento's De'Aaron Fox are all expected to be named as the 3 All-Star reserve replacements for the February 19th game in Salt Lake City. So that's pretty cool, because there's another snub in the Eastern Conference in James Harden. I guess guards, forwards, I don't even know where people are classified in terms of positions at this point, but Pascal Siakam deserves this All-Star appearance where he's averaging like 25, 7 and 5 and all that sort of stuff. Like remarkable stats. His assists, his facilitating have improved this year. He's an elite defender. Pascal has really just done it all for this Raptors team. And with the lack of depth that this Raptors team has had this year, a lot has been put onto his shoulders, and I think he's run with it. Even though the Raptors don't have the greatest record just as of yet, there's only 3-4 games out of the big clump of teams in the Eastern Conference, so I think things will change now with the acquisition of Jakob Poeltl, but I'm very happy, and congratulations to Pascal Siakam being named an All-Star. And Woj did use the terminology that are expected to be named, but I don't imagine Woj would be reporting it if it wasn't basically official. So I'm counting as official. If Woj tweets it, it's in my books, and if I'm wrong, I'll announce on the next video. But shout out to Pascal Siakam being the All-Star team. And if you want to see our All-Star pay and you want to bet on our All-Star team and the new look Toronto Raptors with Big Jakob Poeltl in the squad, definitely check out the Cool Bet Sportsbook. Bet every single Toronto Raptors game, NBA game, and any sport in general. You can bet on quarter stats, games, that odds that change throughout the game, right? You can build your own bets, and you can go into the Cool Bet app, and you can bet on game totals, the plus minuses for each team. So lots of stuff you can bet on using the Cool Bet app and get some pretty good odds there for the Raptors games as well. So I'm betting on the old Toronto Raptors now going forward with a Big Yak inserted at the center position. So good stuff there. But shout out to Cool Bet for supporting the podcast. But the next thing we're taking a look at is the Nets wanted Siakam to appease Kevin Durant. They want to acquire Siakam to appease Kevin Durant. Maybe not a Siakam to go out there and say, welcome Kevin Durant. I digress on that point. But Zach Lowe had a lot of information regarding the Toronto Raptors ahead of this year's trade deadline come out yesterday. And basically he had this to say. I was told that, I think that they told him, hey man, in the summer, we can get some big names. And there are going to be some big names who will ask out. We are going to collect stuff and get ourselves a shot at it. So that's referring to the Brooklyn Nets front office talking to Kevin Durant. And basically, I'm not going to name who the names are, but I think that's a conversation that was had. And they tried to get Pascal Siakam now in the interviewing in the intervening 96 hours because Kevin Durant made it known that he likes Pascal Siakam and he thought he would be a good fit. So the Brooklyn Nets, in hopes of not having Kevin Durant ask out and request a trade again from Brooklyn, they wanted Pascal Siakam to come down to the Brooklyn Nets, as Kevin Durant thought he'd be an amazing fit. Saw how Pascal complimented a guy like Kawhi Leonard, won an NBA championship. Him and Kawhi had a historic playoff run in terms of scoring points, and KD wanted old Pascal down there in Brooklyn. But obviously the Toronto Raptors were not going to trade Pascal unless it was a Godfather offer, and there was talks, a lot of chatter, a lot of rumors about how the Raptors were intent on acquiring Nick Claxton. There's rumors that they've had discussions regarding Ben Simmons and draft capital, all that sort of stuff, but obviously no move was going down. So it's cool that Pascal Siakam is getting that respect from a guy like Kevin Durant out there and trying to get him to team up, create one of those super teams, but I'm very glad that he didn't end up getting dealt. But the next thing we're taking a look at is a couple more offers that were revealed ahead of this year's trade deadline. And these ones are pretty interesting, as there's some wild OG Anunoby and Fred VanVleet trade offers. So we'll discuss those. Basically, again, come from Zach Lowe, that they were offered first-round picks to Toronto for OG Anunoby, sources said, but Anunoby remains a Raptor. The Indiana Pacers also offered 3 first-round picks for OG Anunoby, the sources said, but could not get a deal done. The Pacers own extra picks from Boston and the Cleveland Cavaliers. So for everyone that saw this and said, oh, we get 3 Pacers picks for OG, right? The Pacers aren't that good. They'd be great picks. Why wouldn't we accept that? The picks that were likely offered were Boston Celtics and Cleveland Cavaliers, who are 2 of the top teams in the Eastern Conference, upper echelon teams. So those picks weren't going to have a lot of value. And the Raptors made it clear in the trade talks that they wanted a high-level player or prospect along with the draft picks in an OG Anunoby deal. And interestingly enough, the New Orleans Pelicans are another rumored team suitor for OG Anunoby, but they didn't have serious talks about the Raptors, sources said. That's quite interesting given the fact that there's all these reports regarding a bidding war and everything happening, but interesting stuff there from Zach Lowe. It went on to say, the Warriors also were in some trade chatter, but Jonathan Kuminga would have to been, he was asked, we talked about this in the video yesterday, right? And the Raptors wanted, obviously, draft capital and stuff on top of Kuminga. OG's too valuable. Just give away for one guy that hasn't really proven himself, and ceiling could potentially be an OG Anunoby-esque player. So it's makes sense that a deal didn't go down, especially the Pelicans, the team that all Raptors fans were intrigued about their assets, didn't make the deal. So interesting stuff there. And Michael Grange came out with an interesting report regarding Fred VanVleet, saying a couple deadline tidbits regarding discussions that were had between the Milwaukee Bucks involving Fred VanVleet, Grayson Allen, and a future first. And we'll talk about the Clippers. I'll read the Clipper ones. The Clippers were also talking about Kennard and Brandon Boston Jr., but didn't want to include a pick. So I'll address the Clippers one. The Clippers are just stupid for not including a pick for Fred VanVleet there. Like, Fred VanVleet really would have helped that team. That's just my take. Even if he has taken a step back on the defensive end, he's a championship pedigree, has that point guard ability. He's averaging like 20 and 7, right? Knocks down the threes, can stay on the court for the Clippers. Glad that deal didn't happen. I'd be shook if we took on Kennard's bad contract and Boston Jr., who does not have a lot of potential, for Fred. And the one that's even more head-scratching is sending Fred VanVleet to a conference rival in the Milwaukee Bucks for Grayson Allen and a pick? Like, what? I don't know. I guess teams really don't want to pay. They're spooked about that contract he might receive this offseason, especially with all the rumors the Magic are going around and stuff. But even for a rental, I mean, the Bucks gave up 5 second-round picks for Jay Crowder. Like, a pick as well as Grayson Allen for Fred VanVleet would have been an absolute steal for the Milwaukee Bucks. I don't even know why the Toronto Raptors would be involved in that. And then Zach Lowe also sort of indicated he didn't feel like the Toronto Raptors really wanted to deal Fred VanVleet. So interesting stuff there. I know our comment section is very split on their opinions of Fred VanVleet, but let me know what you guys think about all of that. And if you guys want to stay up to date with everything regarding the Toronto Raptors, definitely hit that subscribe button. It means the world to us. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.